Get out! The conference room went silent. Naima didn't even hear her own voice crack before her knees buckled and the floor rushed up to meet her face. Someone screamed. Maybe it was Hannah from accounting. Maybe it was her own mind trying to warn her that falling in a room full of executives was the worst possible thing she could do right now. But the pain in her stomach had been building for 3 days, and she'd ignored it because taking a sick day meant losing this contract, and losing this contract meant her mother's medical bills would pile up even higher, and she couldn't afford that. She hit the carpet hard. The fluorescent lights above became blurry stars. "Miss Thompson, are you okay?" That was Mr. Park, the company's legal advisor. His voice sounded far away, like he was speaking from underwater. Hands grabbed her shoulders. Someone rolled her onto her back. The movement made her gasp because the pressure on her abdomen felt like fire spreading through her entire body. "Call an ambulance," someone said. "No." Naima forced the word out, even though her lips felt numb. "I'm fine. Just give me a second." "You're not fine." The voice was different now, deeper, sharp enough to cut through the panic buzzing in her ears. "Everyone out, now." Naima blinked hard, trying to focus. The face above her came into view slowly. Dark eyes, strong jawline, black hair pushed back from his forehead. Min Jae Kang, the CEO's son, the man everyone whispered about in the break room because he'd shown up 3 months ago from Seoul and somehow convinced his father to let him run the international division despite being only 28. The man everyone said had connections to people you didn't want to meet in dark alleys. "I said out." Min Jae didn't raise his voice, but somehow it got louder anyway, like he'd learned how to make words hit harder without shouting. Footsteps scattered. The door clicked shut. Silence pressed down on them. "Where does it hurt?" Min Jae's hand moved. To her side, gentle but firm, like he was checking for broken bones. "I'm really okay, Mr. Kang." Naima tried to sit up. His hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Stop lying." He wasn't looking at her face anymore. He was staring at her stomach where her white blouse had pulled up slightly during the fall. "Who did this to you?" Naima followed his gaze and her heart dropped. The bruise. She'd forgotten about the bruise. It spread across her left side in shades of purple and yellow, about the size of a dinner plate. 3 days old but still angry looking. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "I fell at home." "You fell." Min Jae's voice went flat, dead. The kind of tone that made the temperature in the room drop 5 degrees. "On what exactly?" "The stairs. I tripped on the stairs." He studied her face for a long moment, and Naima realized with growing horror that he didn't believe her. Not even a little bit. "Get up." Min Jae stood and offered his hand. "We're going to the hospital." "Mr. Kang, I have a presentation in 20 minutes. "The presentation is canceled." He pulled out his phone, typed something fast. "Everyone's going home early. Paid leave." "You can't just cancel the whole meeting because I got dizzy." "I can do whatever I want." He was still holding his hand out, waiting. "And right now, I want you to stop being stubborn and let me take you to get checked out." Naima took his hand because arguing seemed pointless. His grip was warm and steady, and she hated that it made her feel safer than she'd felt in weeks. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Min Jae sat next to her in the plastic chairs, scrolling through his phone with his jaw clenched tight. He hadn't said much during the drive over, just asked for her insurance card and told the receptionist that money wasn't an issue. Make sure she sees someone immediately. "You really didn't have to come with me," Naima said quietly. "I'm sure you have more important things to do. Nothing's more important than this." He didn't look up from his phone. A nurse called her name. The examination took 30 minutes. Blood work, questions about her medical history, a doctor pressing carefully on her stomach and asking her to rate the pain on a scale of 1 to 10. She said 6. It was actually closer to 8, but she didn't want to seem dramatic. When she came back out to the waiting room, Min Jae stood up so fast his chair scraped against the linoleum. "Well, severe bruising, but nothing's broken." Naima tried to smile. "Told you I was fine." "And the cause?" She opened her mouth, closed it. The lie she'd been preparing died on her tongue because something in his eyes told her he'd know if she tried to feed him another story about falling downstairs. "My ex-boyfriend," she said finally. The words felt like glass in her throat. "He came by my apartment 3 nights ago. We got into an argument about money I supposedly owe him. Things got physical. I pushed him away, and he pushed back harder." Min Jae's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists at his sides. "His name. Mr. Kang, please don't do anything crazy. His name," he repeated. And this time there was something dangerous threading through his voice. Something that made her think about all those rumors she'd heard in the break room, about his connections in Seoul, about men who'd crossed him and disappeared. "Derek Mitchell." The name came out as a whisper. "But he's not worth your time. I'm handling it." "By letting him put his hands on you?" Min Jae's voice was still calm, but his eyes had gone cold. "That's how you're handling it?" "I filed a police report. They said they'd look into it." He laughed once, sharp and bitter. "The police? Right, because they're so effective at stopping men like him. What else am I supposed to do?" Min Jae looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his face. The coldness melted into something softer. Something that looked almost like concern. "Let me help you," he said quietly. "Why?" Naima shook her head. "You don't even know me. I'm just some analyst who works in your building." "You're not just some analyst." He hesitated, like he was choosing his next words carefully. "You've been at the company for 2 years. You never take lunch breaks because you're always working on someone else's projects. You stay late every night. You smile at everyone even when they're rude to you. And you make the best coffee in the break room even though it's not your job." Naima stared at him. "You noticed all that?" "I notice a lot of things." He pulled out his phone again. "Give me your address. I'm getting you a security system installed tonight." "Mr. Kang, that's too much." "Min Jae." He finally looked at her again. "Call me Min Jae, and it's not too much. It's the bare minimum." She should have said no, should have insisted she could handle her own problems. But the truth was she couldn't afford a security system, and Derek had been texting her every day since that night, messages that started with apologies and ended with threats. "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you." Something flickered across Min Jae's face. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. He nodded once and started typing on his phone again. "There's a team coming to your place at 6. They'll have everything set up by 8. And tomorrow you're moving into one of my properties." "Wait, what?" "Temporary." He held up a hand before she could protest. "Just until we handle Derek. The building has 24-hour security and cameras everywhere. You'll be safe there." "Min Jae, I can't just move into your apartment." "It's not my apartment. I own the building. You'll have your own unit. Fully furnished, no rent. I can't accept that." "You can and you will." His tone left no room for argument. "Unless you want to keep looking over your shoulder every time you come home. Unless you want to wonder if Derek's going to show up again and this time do worse than bruise your stomach." Naima's hands started shaking. She pressed them together in her lap. "He said he'd kill me if I told anyone," she admitted. "That night when he hit me, he said if I went to the police or told my friends or made any trouble for him, he'd make sure I disappeared." Min Jae went very still. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but somehow it felt louder than shouting. "He's not going to touch you again. I promise you that." "You can't promise something like that." "Yes, I can." He stood up and offered his hand again. "Come on, let's get you home." The security team showed up exactly at 6. 3 men in black uniforms who worked quickly and efficiently, installing cameras and sensors and a new lock on her door that required a code to open from the outside. Min Jae supervised everything from her tiny living room, occasionally giving instructions in Korean that made the men work faster. Naima watched from the kitchen, feeling like she'd stumbled into someone else's life. This morning she'd been worried about losing a client contract. Now she had a CEO installing military-grade security in her apartment because her ex-boyfriend was a violent piece of garbage. "All done," one of the men said, handing her a tablet. "This controls everything. Cameras, locks, alarm system. You can monitor it all from your phone too. We'll send you the app download link." "Thank you," Naima said numbly. After they left, Min Jae walked through the apartment one more time, checking every window and door. When he finished, he came back to the living room and pulled out a business card. "My personal number." He set it on her coffee table. Not the office line. If Derek contacts you, if anything happens, if you even think something's wrong, you call me immediately. Doesn't matter what time it is. Min-jae. Naima picked up the card. Why are you doing all this? He was quiet for a moment, staring at her bookshelf like it held the answer to her question. Because someone should have done it for my sister, he said finally. And nobody did. Before Naima could ask what he meant, he was already heading for the door. Get some rest, he said without turning around. I'll see you tomorrow. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in an apartment that suddenly felt more like a fortress than a home. Naima didn't sleep that night. She kept checking the tablet, watching the camera feeds, jumping at every small sound. At 3 a.m, her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown. Number. You think some fancy locks are going to stop me? I know where your mother lives too. Her hands went cold. She grabbed Min-jae's card and dialed before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the first ring. What happened? No grogginess in his voice. He'd been awake too. Derek texted me. She read him the message, hating how her voice shook. He's threatening my mom now. Send me your mother's address. I'll have security there within the hour. Min-jae, this is getting out of hand. No? His voice went hard. Derek getting away with hurting you is what's out of hand. This is me fixing it. Send me the address. She did. Then she sat on her couch and waited, watching the cameras until sunrise. Morning came with a phone call from her mother. Baby, there are men outside my building, her mom said, sounding more confused than scared. They said you sent them? It's complicated, Mom. Naima rubbed her eyes. She'd maybe slept an hour total. I'll explain later. Just let them do their job, okay? Naima Grace Thompson, what kind of trouble are you in? The kind where my ex-boyfriend is a psychopath. She kept her voice light, but her mother had always been good at reading between the lines. A long pause. Then, quieter. He hurt you. I'm fine now. Someone's helping me handle it. Someone. Her mother's tone shifted into that dangerous territory between concern and interrogation. Who exactly is this someone? Just a friend from work. Uh-huh. And does this friend from work have a name? Mom, I really have to go. Naima, I love you. The security's just temporary. I'll call you tonight. She hung up before her mother could push harder because explaining that her boss had essentially declared war on Derek felt too complicated for a phone conversation. Her apartment buzzer rang at 8 sharp. When she checked the camera feed, Min-jae was standing in the lobby wearing dark jeans and a gray sweater that made him look less like a CEO and more like a college student who'd wandered into the wrong building. She hit the intercom. You're here early. Moving day, remember? He held up a coffee cup. Plus, I brought breakfast. When she opened the door, he handed her the coffee in a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. You didn't have to do this, she said. I know. He stepped inside, looking around her apartment with the same careful attention he'd used last night. Pack what you need for a week. Clothes, toiletries, anything important. The movers will handle the rest. Movers? Min-jae, I told you this is too much. And I told you it's temporary. He pulled out his phone. The new place is 15 minutes from here, same distance to the office, better neighborhood, and like I said, 24-hour security. Naima wanted to argue, but the text from Derek was still burned into her brain. The threat against her mother. The casual cruelty in those words. Okay, she said quietly. Give me 20 minutes. She packed quickly, throwing clothes and shoes into a duffel bag while Min-jae waited in the living room. When she came back out, he took the bag from her without asking and headed for the door. That's it? He asked. I travel light. Good. Makes this easier. The building he took her to was in Gangnam, the kind of place with a doorman and marble floors and art in the lobby that probably cost more than her yearly salary. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Min-jae. Naima stopped in the doorway. This is not a temporary apartment. It's one of my properties, he said, like that explained everything. I'm not using it right now, so you might as well. I can't afford this. I'm not asking you to pay for it. He set her bag down by the door and walked to the windows. Look, I get that you're independent. I get that you want to handle your own problems. But Derek isn't a problem you can handle alone. He's dangerous and he's escalating, and if you try to fight him by yourself, you're going to get hurt worse than some bruises. So what's your plan? Naima crossed her arms. Lock me in a fancy tower until he goes away? No. Min-jae turned to face her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. My plan is to make him understand that touching you was the biggest mistake of his life. That sounds like you're planning to do something illegal. Define illegal. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile. More like the memory of one. Min-jae, relax. He waved a hand dismissively. I'm not going to kill him. Probably. I'm just going to have a conversation with him about respecting boundaries. And by conversation, you mean? You really want details? Naima thought about it. About Derek's fist in her stomach. About the text threatening her mother. About 2 years of walking on eggshells around a man who'd slowly isolated her from her friends and convinced her that his anger was somehow her fault. No, she said finally. I don't want details. I just want him gone. Then trust me. Min-jae pulled out his phone again. I'm going to need some information. Derek's address, where he works, what kind of car he drives, his regular schedule. You're starting to sound like a stalker. Takes one to know one. He was scrolling through something on his screen. Derek's been following you for weeks. I had someone pull his social media. He's got photos of you leaving work, getting coffee, walking to your car. The guy's obsessed. How did you get access to his social media? I have people. He said it casually, like having people who could hack into private accounts was perfectly normal. Now give me what I need so I can start fixing this. She told him everything. Derek's apartment in Hongdae. His job at a marketing firm downtown, the black Honda he drove. His habit of going to the same bar every Friday night. Min-jae typed it all into his phone with quick, precise movements. Good, he said when she finished. That's enough to work with. What are you going to do? Make him disappear from your life. He looked up from his phone, and his eyes were gentle despite the hard edge in his voice. But first, we're going to make sure you're actually okay. When's the last time you ate a real meal? I had coffee this morning. Coffee's not food. He was already heading for the kitchen. Sit down. I'll make something. You cook? I'm Korean. Of course I cook. Watching Min-jae move around a kitchen was surprisingly domestic. He found ingredients she didn't know were there, and within 20 minutes had produced kimchi fried rice and rolled omelet that smelled better than anything she'd made in her entire life. They ate in silence for a while. The food was good. Really good. And Naima realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for her without expecting something in return. This is amazing, she said between bites. My mom's recipe. He poked at his rice with his chopsticks. She used to make it every Sunday when I was a kid. Used to? She passed away 5 years ago. He said it matter-of-factly, but something in his eyes went distant. Cancer. It happened fast. I'm sorry. Don't be. He set his chopsticks down. She's the one who taught me that family protects family, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Is that what I am now? Naima asked quietly. Family? Min-jae looked at her for a long moment, and something unreadable crossed his face. You're someone who needs help, he said finally. And I'm someone who can help. That's enough for now. After breakfast, Min-jae left to handle what he called business, but was probably illegal. Naima spent the afternoon exploring the penthouse, trying not to think about Derek or her mother, or the fact that she'd basically moved into a stranger's apartment. Except Min-jae didn't feel like a stranger anymore. He felt like someone who decided she was worth protecting and refused to negotiate on that point. Her phone rang around 4. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her hit the green button. Hello? Naima. Derek's voice. Smooth and friendly, like they were old friends catching up. We need to talk. No, we don't. About those security guards at your mom's place. He laughed softly. That was a cute move. But you really think some minimum wage rent-a-cops are going to stop me? Stay away from my mother. Then stop hiding behind your rich boyfriend and talk to me like an adult. His voice hardened. You owe me $3,000. Pay me back and I'll leave you alone. I don't owe you anything. That's not what our text messages say. He was enjoying this. She could hear it in his tone. Remember when you borrowed money for your mom's surgery? Remember when you promised to pay me back? That was a gift. You said it was a gift. Funny how memory works. Another laugh. Meet me tomorrow night, 8 o'clock at that coffee shop near your office. Bring the money or I'm going to make your life very uncomfortable. I'm not meeting you anywhere. Then I'm going to your mom's place, and we're going to have a conversation about what a disappointment her daughter turned out to be. He paused. Your choice, Naima. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. Naima sat on the couch, phone still pressed to her ear, trying to stop her hands from shaking. She should call Min Jae. Should tell him about the threat. But part of her wondered if maybe she could handle this herself. If maybe paying Derek $3,000 she didn't have would make all of this go away. The front door opened. Min Jae walked in carrying shopping bags from stores she recognized but could never afford. I got you some things, he said, setting the bags on the counter. Figured you might need more clothes if you're staying here for a while. Min Jae, you can't keep buying me stuff. Watch me. He started pulling items from the bags. Designer jeans, soft sweaters, a winter coat that looked like it cost more than her rent. I guessed on sizes, but the store said you can exchange anything that doesn't fit. This is too much. It's really not. He looked at her face and his expression shifted. What happened? Nothing. You're a terrible liar. He crossed the room and sat down next to her. Talk to me. So she told him about Derek's call, about the demand for money, about the threat to visit her mother. Min Jae listened without interrupting, his face going progressively more still until he looked like a statue carved from ice. You're not meeting him, he said when she finished. I know that. And you're not paying him. His voice was flat, final. He's extorting you. That ends now. He said he has text messages proving I borrowed money. Then he's lying or he edited them. Min Jae pulled out his phone. I'm going to handle this tonight. What are you going to do? Nothing you need to worry about. He stood up and headed for the door. Min Jae, wait. He stopped, hand on the doorknob. Why are you doing all this? She asked. And don't tell me it's because of your sister. There's something else. He turned around slowly, and the look on his face made her heart do something complicated in her chest. Because you remind me of her, he said quietly. My sister. She was strong and stubborn, and she always put everyone else first. She dated a guy who hurt her, and she never told anyone because she thought she could handle it alone. By the time we found out, it was too late. He'd isolated her completely, and she was too scared to leave. One night she tried anyway, and he killed her for it. The silence after Min Jae's confession felt heavy. Naima wanted to say something, anything, but words seemed wrong when he was standing there looking like he'd ripped open an old wound just to show her why he cared. I'm sorry, she finally managed. That's horrible. It was 4 years ago. He wasn't looking at her anymore. His eyes were fixed on something past the windows, maybe the city lights or maybe just the memory. I was in Seoul running a different kind of business. The kind my father didn't approve of. When I got the call that she was gone, I came back and found out the guy had been hurting her for months. Everyone knew, but nobody did anything because he was rich and connected and people were scared. What happened to him? Min Jae's expression went dark. He disappeared. Some people say he moved to Japan. Others say he's at the bottom of the Han River. Nobody looked very hard to find out. The implication hung between them, and Naima realized she should probably be scared of this man who was casually admitting to possible murder. But she wasn't. Instead, she felt something closer to relief because someone finally understood why running from Derek wasn't as simple as just leaving. I won't let that happen to you, Min Jae continued. Derek thinks he can threaten you and you'll just accept it because that's what you've always done. He's counting on you being too tired or too scared to fight back. But he doesn't know about me yet. And when he finds out, he's going to wish he'd never touched you. He left before Naima could respond. The door closed softly behind him, and she was alone again in a penthouse that felt too big and too empty. She tried on the clothes he'd bought. Everything fit perfectly. The sweater was cashmere and softer than anything she'd owned before. The jeans were the exact shade of dark blue she always looked for but could never afford. Even the coat had her style written all over it. He'd been paying attention, not just to how she worked or whether she smiled at people. He'd been watching what she wore and how she carried herself and what made her comfortable. That should have felt creepy, but somehow it just felt like being seen. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Mom, those security men are very handsome. Are you dating one of them? Naima. Mom, no, they're just doing their job. Mom, the tall one asked about you, wanted to know if you were always this stubborn. Naima. And you said? Mom, I said yes, obviously. Also, I invited them in for coffee and they told me their boss is very concerned about your safety. Seems like a good man, this boss of yours. Naima. He's just being nice. Mom, nobody's that nice without a reason. He likes you. Naima. It's not like that. Mom. Sure it's not. Love you, baby. Stay safe. Naima stared at her phone. The idea that Min Jae liked her felt impossible. He was helping because of his sister, because he saw Naima as another woman who needed saving. It wasn't personal, except the way he looked at her sometimes felt very personal. She pushed that thought away and focused on unpacking the few things she'd brought. Her laptop, a few books, the photo of her and her mother from last Christmas. Small pieces of a life that had gotten too complicated too fast. Min Jae didn't come back that night, or the next morning. By afternoon, Naima was starting to worry until her phone rang with his number. Where are you? She asked immediately. Handling things. His voice sounded tired. How are you doing? Fine, bored. This place is huge. Sorry, I should have thought about that. She heard traffic in the background, car horns, someone shouting in Korean. Listen, Derek's been taken care of. What does that mean? It means he won't be bothering you anymore. A pause. I'm sending over the security footage from his apartment building. He left Seoul this morning. Bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok. He won't be coming back. Naima sat down on the couch. You scared him out of the country? I had a conversation with him about respecting boundaries. He decided a fresh start sounded nice. Min Jae's voice was casual, but Naima could read between the lines. Whatever conversation they'd had involved things she probably didn't want details about. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet. He might try to contact you from Thailand. If he does, block him immediately and let me know. Okay, I have to go. I'll be back tonight. We can get dinner or something. You don't have to babysit me. I want to. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I'll see you at 7. Dinner turned into bibimbap from a restaurant down the street that Min Jae claimed had the best dolsot in Seoul. They ate on the balcony with the city spread out below them and talked about everything except Derek. She learned that Min Jae had studied business in New York but hated it. That he'd come back to Korea and spent 3 years working for organizations his father definitely didn't approve of. That he'd only agreed to join the family company after his sister died because suddenly revenge mattered less than making sure other people didn't get hurt. What kind of organizations? Naima asked carefully. The kind that operate outside normal business hours. He poked at his rice. I ran protection services, helped people who couldn't go to the police, solved problems that regular law enforcement wouldn't touch. Like a private security company? More like a very particular kind of problem solver. He met her eyes. I've done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably deserved it, but maybe not as much as I hurt them. I'm trying to be better now. My father thinks joining the company will help me go legitimate. Sometimes I think he's right. Other times, I miss the old work. Do you still have connections to that world? Always. He said it without hesitation. Once you're in, you never really get out. You just learn how to balance both lives. They finished eating and moved inside. Min Jae put on music, something soft and instrumental that filled the apartment with gentle sound. Naima sat on the couch and watched him move through the space like he belonged there, even though he'd told her he never used this place. Why did you give me this apartment if you never stay here? She asked. Because I knew you'd need somewhere safe, and this was the most secure place I own. He sat down next to her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. And maybe because I wanted an excuse to spend more time with you. Min Jae, I know what you're going to say. He held up a hand. You're dealing with trauma. Your ex just left the country. This isn't the right time, and you're probably right. But I've been watching you for 6 months, and I can't stop thinking that someone should tell you how impressive you are. I'm not impressive. I'm a mess. You're a mess who shows up every day and does her job perfectly while dealing with an abusive ex and a sick mother and medical bills that would break most people. You're a mess who smiles at everyone even when you're in pain. That's not weakness. That's strength. Naima felt something crack open in her chest. I don't feel strong. Nobody does when they're surviving. He shifted closer and his hand found hers on the couch. But you're here. You're safe. And you're going to be okay. His hand was warm and steady, and Naima realized she wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that maybe life could be simple for once. That maybe letting someone help didn't mean she was weak. Thank you, she said softly. You keep saying that. Because you keep doing things worth thanking you for. They sat like that for a while, hands touching, music playing, the city glowing outside the windows. And for the first time in weeks, Naima felt like she could breathe without waiting for something terrible to happen. The next few weeks developed into a rhythm. Naima went back to work, and Min Jae made sure she always had a driver waiting outside. They had dinner together most nights, sometimes at fancy restaurants and sometimes just takeout on the balcony. He taught her basic Korean phrases, and she taught him how to make her mother's banana bread recipe. One Saturday, he took her to an arcade in Hongdae where they spent 3 hours playing racing games and shooting zombies and collecting tickets from the claw machines. She won a stuffed panda that was bigger than her torso, and Min Jae insisted on carrying it back to the car while she laughed at how ridiculous he looked. This is undignified, he complained, adjusting his grip on the massive toy. You're the one who said we had to get enough tickets to win it. You liked it. I did. She bumped her shoulder against his. Thank you for today. Stop thanking me. But he was smiling. Another time he showed up at her office with a bag from her favorite bookstore and 3 novels she'd mentioned wanting to read. He left them on her desk with a note that just said thought you might need these and disappeared before she could ask how he'd remembered their conversation from 2 weeks ago. Her co-workers started noticing, started whispering when Min Jae came by her desk or when they left together at the end of the day. Hana from accounting cornered her in the bathroom one afternoon with stars in her eyes. You and Mr. Kang, she said, grinning. How long has that been happening? It's not happening. We're just friends. Friends don't look at each other like that. Like what? Like you're the only 2 people in the room. Hana touched up her lipstick in the mirror. Everyone's talking about it. Some people think it's romantic. Others think you're crazy for getting involved with someone from that family. What do you mean, that family? You really don't know? Hana lowered her voice. The Kangs have connections. Serious connections. Min Jae's father built his business empire on relationships with people who don't exactly operate above board. And Min Jae spent years working in that world before he came back to join the company. I know about his past. Do you? Hana's expression turned serious. Because there are rumors about the things he did, the people he hurt. I'm not saying he's a bad person, but you should be careful. Naima thought about that conversation for days, about the warnings and the whispers and the fact that Min Jae had never hidden who he was. He'd told her straight out about his sister, about the organizations he'd worked for, about the man who'd hurt his sister and then disappeared. She should probably be worried. Should probably put some distance between them. But every time she thought about pulling away, Min Jae would do something stupidly thoughtful, like remember she didn't like mushrooms, or buy her that specific brand of tea she'd mentioned once, or send security to check on her mother without being asked. A month after Derek left, Naima's mother came to visit. She took one look at the penthouse and turned to her daughter with raised eyebrows. So this is just friends, she asked. Mom, please. Baby, I'm not judging. I'm just saying that men don't usually provide luxury penthouses for women they're just friends with. Min Jae chose that moment to walk in from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh fruit and tea. He'd insisted on being there when Naima's mother visited because he wanted to meet her properly. Mrs. Thompson. He set the tray down and bowed slightly. It's nice to finally meet you. Call me Janet. Naima's mother shook his hand, studying him with the intensity of someone conducting an interrogation. And thank you for looking after my daughter. She's easy to look after. That's a lie. She's stubborn as a mule and twice as proud. Mom, it's true. Janet settled into the couch. So Min Jae, tell me about yourself. What are your intentions with my daughter? Oh my God. Naima covered her face with her hands. Can we not do this? I'm her mother. It's my job to ask. Janet smiled, but there was steel underneath. Well? Min Jae didn't hesitate. I care about Naima a lot, and I want to make sure she's safe and happy. That's all." "That's all?" Janet leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've gone to considerable trouble and expense to protect her from a dangerous man. That's not nothing." "No, ma'am, it's not." Min-jae met her eyes steadily. "But Naima deserves to feel safe. She deserves to not have to look over her shoulder or worry about someone hurting her. If I can provide that, then the trouble and expense don't matter." Janet studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "I believe you, but if you hurt her, I know people too. Different people than you know, maybe, but people who'd be very unhappy to hear my daughter's been mistreated." "Understood." "Good." Janet's expression softened. "Now tell me about this fruit. Is that Korean pear? I've always wanted to try it." The rest of the visit went smoothly. They talked and ate, and Janet told embarrassing stories about Naima's childhood that made Min-jae laugh harder than Naima had ever heard. When her mother left, she hugged Min-jae and whispered something in his ear that made him nod seriously. "What did she say?" Naima asked after the door closed. "She said I'd better treat you right or she'd fly back here and have words with me." "Sounds like Mom. She's protective of you." He moved closer. "I like that. She likes you too, I could tell." "Good." His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, and the gesture felt so natural that Naima's heart stuttered. "Because I plan on being around for a while." "Min-jae, I know, too soon, moving too fast, but I'm not good at pretending I don't feel things." His hand dropped, but he didn't step back. "I've spent months watching you and weeks getting to know you, and the more time I spend around you, the more I realize you're exactly the kind of person I want in my life." "I'm a disaster," she said weakly. "You're healing from something terrible. That's different." His voice went soft. "And I want to be here while you heal. If you'll let me." Naima looked at him, really looked, at the way he stood close but not too close, giving her space to choose, at the careful hope in his eyes, at the way he'd restructured parts of his life just to make sure she felt safe. "Okay," she said quietly. "You can stay." Something bright flashed across his face, relief or joy, or maybe both. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." They started dating officially after that, slowly and carefully, like two people learning how to trust again. Min-jae took her to quiet restaurants where they could talk without being overheard. He bought her small gifts that showed he'd been listening, a fountain pen because she mentioned liking to write by hand, a vintage vinyl because she'd told him about her father's old record collection, a cookbook from her favorite chef. She started leaving things at his place, a toothbrush in the bathroom, extra clothes in the closet, books on the nightstand, small pieces of herself that felt less like an invasion and more like coming home. One night they were cooking dinner together when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Naima." Derek's voice, distant but unmistakable. "I've been thinking about you." Her blood went cold. Min-jae noticed immediately, setting down the knife he'd been using and moving to her side. "I told you not to contact me," she said. "And I told you we weren't finished." He sounded drunk, angry. "You think you can just send your boyfriend to threaten me and I'll stay gone? You think I won't come back and finish what we started? You need to stop." "Or what? Your rich Korean boyfriend will make me disappear." Derek laughed, harsh and bitter. "I'm already gone, Naima. I'm calling from a payphone in Bangkok and there's nothing he can do to me here. But I'm coming back. Maybe next week, maybe next month. And when I do, we're going to have that conversation about respect." Min-jae took the phone from her hand. "This is Min-jae," he said calmly. "If you come back to Korea, I will personally ensure you regret it. That's not a threat, it's a promise. Stay in Thailand and find a new life, or come back and find out what happens when you mess with people I care about. Your choice." He hung up and pulled Naima into his arms. "He's bluffing," Min-jae said quietly. "He's scared and drunk and trying to get back some power. But he won't come back. I made sure he understood what would happen if he did." "What did you do to him?" Naima asked into his shoulder. "Nothing permanent. Just had some friends in Bangkok pay him a visit. Remind him that threatening you is bad for his health. He got the message. You have friends in Bangkok. I have friends everywhere. He pulled back to look at her. The old business had reach. I still have connections, and those connections understand that you're under my protection now. Is that what I am? Under your protection? You're a lot more than that. His hands came up to frame her face. You're someone I'm falling for. Someone I want to keep safe. Someone who makes me want to be better than I was. Naima felt tears prick her eyes. I'm falling for you too. Good. He smiled, soft and genuine. Because I was starting to worry. I was the only one. They finished making dinner and ate on the couch with terrible reality TV playing in the background. Min-jae kept his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him, feeling safer than she had in years. Derek didn't call again. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, Naima stopped jumping at shadows. Started sleeping through the night. Started believing that maybe she could have something good without waiting for it to fall apart. 6 months after they started dating officially, Min-jae took her to Jeju Island for a long weekend. They stayed in a cottage by the ocean and spent their days walking on the beach and eating fresh seafood and talking about everything and nothing. On their last night, they sat on the sand watching the sunset turn the water gold and pink. I was thinking, Min-jae said carefully, about the future. What about it? About whether you'd want to make the penthouse permanent. Move in with me officially. He hesitated. I know it's fast, but it doesn't feel fast. It feels like something we've been building towards since that day in the conference room when you collapsed. Naima turned to look at him. Are you asking me to live with you? Yes. He met her eyes. I'm asking. No pressure, but I wake up every morning hoping you'll still be there, and I go to sleep every night grateful that you are. And I want that to be permanent if you do. She thought about the last 6 months, about healing and learning to trust again, about someone who'd seen her at her worst and decided she was worth protecting, about falling in love slowly and carefully with someone who understood that broken things could be beautiful. Yes, she said, I want that too. Min-jae's smile could have lit up the whole beach. He pulled her closer and pressed his forehead to hers. Thank you, he whispered. You're welcome. They stayed like that until the sun disappeared completely and the stars came out. And when they finally walked back to the cottage, hand in hand, Naima realized she'd stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped waiting for something terrible to happen, started believing that maybe this time, happiness would last. A year later, Derek sent a single text message from a number in Thailand. Derek, I'm sorry for everything. I've been getting help, working on myself. I hope you're happy. You deserve it. Naima showed it to Min-jae, who read it twice before nodding. Good, he said simply. Maybe he finally learned something. Do I respond? That's up to you. He set the phone down. But you don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not closure, not even acknowledgement. She thought about it for a day. Then she deleted the message without responding because Min-jae was right. She didn't owe Derek anything. Her life had moved forward, and he wasn't part of it anymore. Some endings didn't need words. They just needed distance and time, and the understanding that some people only belonged in your past. And some people, like the man currently making breakfast in their kitchen while humming off-key to Korean pop music, belonged in your future, in your present, in every good moment you could imagine. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If you loved Naima and Min-jae's story, hit that subscribe button because we've got more romance coming your way. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment. And hey, share this with someone who needs a reminder that healing is possible and love can find you even in the darkest times. See you in the next story.